Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wassalatu wassalamu ala Muhammadin Nabi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Allahumma anfa'na bima 'allamtana wa 'allimna ma yanfa'una. Brothers and sisters and my friends, today the topic which has been given to me for a discussion, it's not going to be a lecture actually, because it's going to be an interactive discussion. This is about raising pious kids. This lecture may be carried forward next week because it needs a detailed addressing of various segments. So I'll cover whatever is possible today based on the time, and then we can switch it over to the next week. First of all, I think whenever we say that we need to do a particular thing, we have to understand why it is important. Why should we take this project? Raising kids is a very usual phenomenon. I mean, some people may say that, what's there? People are giving birth to kids, and kids are being brought up since ages. Yes, that's correct. But today, in this era, we have some challenges that have set it apart from last so many centuries. And we are going to discuss with this as we progress. There are certain preliminaries that we need to understand before we touch this topic. Number one, human beings have been programmed by the Almighty in a manner that we all learn things and absorb things in our personality by seeing somebody else doing it. That's very important. If you understand this thing, and I'll give you a short example. If you put the eggs of a duck and eggs of chicken and let the chicken incubate it, you will get a chicken from the chicken egg and duck from the duck's egg, right? And then you take both these newly born birds and throw them in the water. Chicken is going to drown, and duck, after some efforts, is going to swim. Now, I want you to understand this phenomenon. This is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has programmed animals. That they have been embedded by an inherent quality to swim to the duck, whereas the quality inherently given to the chicken is not swimming. Now, we'll come to a human baby. When he is born and you put him in a swimming pool, probably he's going to die. But the same child, when he grows up and sees and gets trained by a trained swimmer, he swims so fast and with so spectacular speed and technique that the duck is nowhere to be seen in comparison. So what I'm trying to say is that we have to ponder on this programming of humans. Humans learn by seeing things. And that's where training kids or raising kids become very, very, very important aspect of the parents' actions, deeds, and words. Are we clear on this? Okay. So now the thing is, how do we raise kids that are pious, good Muslims? So based on the example that I gave, first and the foremost thing that needs to be done by us as parents is a demonstration. Because if your kids don't see pious and good Muslims in the house where they have been born and brought up, that phenomena of seeing, absorbing, and learning is not going to happen. And no matter how big dream we have of our kids becoming pious or good Muslims, that is not going to get materialized. Okay? Are we clear on this? Is there any question? Please ask if you have any question. You may have questions. Please come and ask. Okay. There are three things that influence substantially. When I say substantially, it means there may be other things that influence a child's personality. But the three things are the parents, number one, the informal education. Well, informal education encompasses everything that parents teach to the kids, and the nearest family members, that like the siblings, like the uncles or the grandparents, they teach to the kid. This is known as an informal education. And the seedbed of education for a child is the mother. So it's the second influence, the first influence is parents. Second influence is the family members that live with the kids. And the third influence is when he goes out to the school, when he goes out of his home and he sees a lot of people, he learns from his teachers, from his friends. So if you add up these three main things, you will get a personality of a person. So in order to make a good personality, you need to make sure that these three main sectors of influence are taken into consideration in our strategy. Okay? This raising kids is a project. I've seen parents taking it as like, you know, it's everyday normal youth routine. Kids are going to be brought up like any other family. No. If you want your kids to be brought up in a manner that you want, then you have to take it as a project. And what is the divine system rule of this world by the Creator? The Creator gave us the knowledge of the metaphysics that our brain and science and our human faculties cannot access. But how would we live in this world to the best of our advantage has been left to our knowledge, our resources, and our reasoning. So here too, like any other project, you have to ponder, plan, organize, strategize, and then gain all the resources to make things happen. If you don't do this, things are not going to happen. And I give a very simple example of this. Because you see, we feel that, you know, what we dream or what we wish should come to pass right away. That's human nature, isn't it? It's nature, right? Mm-hmm. Humans don't want to work, but they want to get everything, anything that they desire at the time when they desire. So now this tendency has to be overcome in terms of seeing the reality. The reality is that you plan, make a goal, organize, do the work, and then make it happen. Then once you do that, the Almighty gives an attention to that work, and if it may come, it may not come to pass. But majority of the times, when you do your homework, the divine intervention is not going to go against you. Like if I plan my studies, do everything, provide money, do my hard work, it is very, very unlikely that Allah will come up and make you fail. No, the majority of the track is that you work. Okay, now, a lot of people, you know, they think that, you know, they failed and they cry and they complain all the time. So when I go back and see and audit their entire homework, I find that, they were themselves lacking in their efforts, planning, organizing, and using their capabilities. And then I give them an example that if somebody had the privilege to get the things done just by his own desires, that would have been our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But you can see that, he had a real tough time fighting wars, making preparations, bringing whatever he had. So I just give them an example that this is not going to happen to us because it didn't happen to Prophet. Even there, when the battles were going on, Allah said, you are weaker? Okay, not a problem. But you got to come out. You got to gather whatever you have. So now they had 313 people. Now, once they did it, then Allah came, gave his attention and said, okay, you got it right now. That's not my job to do it. But without those 313, I can guarantee you that's what the Quran tells us. Even the Prophet was supposed to do this much. So now when it comes to this raising kids, I want to draw your attention that if parents want to raise good kids, they have to do something, just like in a manner that it's a project. Plan, organize, strategize, gather resources, and give sacrifice in making it happen. Okay? That's the divine system. Never forget it. You will not get it just because you dream. You can do whatever you like, but you dream that my son is going to be like Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu ta'ala or Ali. No, sir. It's not a dream. And most of the time, I've seen parents dreaming this and then complaining. So the first thing we have to make it sure, we have to recompose ourselves that this is a project. We have to work for it. We have to sacrifice our pleasures, our desires, our resources to make it happen. Okay? Last thing in the preliminaries, that Allah is the law of Allah, that you are not going to be held accountable for things that were beyond your control. That's right. La yukallifu Allahu nafsan illa wusaha. That's what the scholars have told us of this ayah. Now, can you imagine that my kids, when they were born to me, I will be accountable for each and everything that was in my control to make them good Muslims, and I failed to do it. And I always take an excuse, oh, I did my best. So can you imagine how responsible this thing is? And I can tell you, if you as parents, if we as parents fail to understand this responsibility, and in spite of the fact that Allah has given us all the resources, the mind, the intellectual capability, and the will to do it, and still we don't do it intentionally because of, who's going to sacrifice this? Oh, it's very difficult. Then I can tell you that we may be held responsible. A child going astray, a child going away from Allah's deen is going to be judged by how much control their parents had in stopping him. This is very important. So please feel the responsibility. We are responsible, okay, for this. Right now, the focus of this discussion is the challenge. You see, 50 years ago, we were brought up in a manner that we would see our elders and we would never dare to question them in whatever they fall. See, 50 years ago, kids would justify whatever the parents do. They would justify. And this justification was so embedded that you can see, In the Quran also, when Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, why don't you, leave the idol worshipping? And their argument was this: how can we do that? We've seen our parents doing this. Can you imagine the impact? What is the impact of parents' actions when people see, when kids see? They absorb, they replicate, and then they subconsciously justify those acts. Even now, I have been talking to a lot of people who are non-Muslims. I have a lot of friends who are from the Hindu community and from the Christian community, and I deliberately interact with them and ask them. Majority of the time, what takes them away from intellectually pondering on their own religion is the fact, and it's such a heavy barrier. See, my father and my grandfather all been doing this. How can they be wrong? So I want you to understand that any intentional lapse from our side can result in a lot of problems. So you have to understand that kids not only take, replicate, and absorb things, but they start justifying it. And that's why I have seen in my whole 20 years research in this, that one of the parents used to drink and drink it privately, not in the public, but obviously the kids know. And eventually when the kids they were brought up, they grow old, they never took an exception to drinking, although they may not drink themselves. But at the back of the mind, they had an idea that, this is something that my dad, such is the implication. So whenever we are now embarking upon the road to hit the road for our kids, we have to understand how long-term the impacts are of whatever we do in our lives. Okay? Now, what is the challenge? Today is the challenge. There's no more that, please do this. My kids are going to do this because my dad has done this. No. What has happened? I'll summarize it. Number one, there is an abundance of information available to a child at an age that we would never even think of getting it in our times. Like, say, about a 5-year to 7-year period of child today has information on topics that we would probably come to know when we were 17 or 16. Now, this influx is doing something that, it is generating awareness. I come to know something, and that awares me of something. That's the process. You have to understand the process. What is the challenge today? The kid gets an information from wherever. From wherever. He would get it from somewhere, and he's getting it. Now, it goes inside, and it creates an awareness. Now, when you are aware of something, your mind generates a lot of curiosity, questions, and at the age of 5 to 7, kids are, they are after everything new to be exploring. So now this awareness gives curiosity. Want to know, what is this? Okay, I would like to know further. Oh, this happens with this. A phenomena is known, and they say, oh, this happens, this after this. Okay, this after this. Now, this curiosity needs answers. Today's children are not going to keep quiet just because, they are afraid of the, parents or grandparents. No, even if they don't say, because I'll give you an example. I had a discussion with the kids about 2 weeks ago on a topic, why religion. So I started discussing with the kids, and I said, if your parents don't give you any answers, do you still have the question? They say, yeah, we have it. And they were about from 7 to 13, the kids here. So then I asked that, do you get all the answers? They said, no. Why? So the kids said that, some of the questions we would not like to pose to our parents. And some of the answers we are not satisfied. Okay, fine. Now, what happens with the first type of questions? Where would you get the answers? And they say, we will go to the internet. And then the second one, which you're not satisfied, same, internet. See, that's now the reality. Let's see the reality first. Now, what is the sum total of all this happening? You see, this is the age of freedom. Today, the age of faith, the religion has gone. Today, for whatever reason, that's not our topic. Humans, and especially those human beings in the world who have the power, the political power to dictate the entire world. So the nations that are ruling this world, they have now inculcated in them and are professing that freedom has to be the rule number one. Now, this information, queries, curiosity, finding things, and then getting it known from the source and finding it abundantly available without any veil gives the kids that we are free to do whatever we want, we are free to talk whatever we want, and we are free to profess it. You know, that's the general idea. Please think it over. If you think that, you know, I have understood incorrectly, please correct me. This age of freedom. Okay, now, this age of freedom and information abundance has given a big, has given birth to a big deceit, as a big deceit. And that is that information is knowledge. You see, we say that, you know, today in information highway, we have a lot of knowledge available and no, you have to understand. And my respected teacher, Khalid Zaid is here, and I discussed with him before this lecture, and he also agreed on this, that information and knowledge are two different things. Information is knowing some fact, some news, something happening, some idea, that's it. Whereas knowledge is that if the same information is processed in a critical thinking and critically processed manner, and once it is established that yes, this information can be beneficial, then it becomes knowledge. But the biggest deceit of today's challenge is that, you know, they say, you know, we don't need to teach the kids. They know everything. No, sir. We need to teach the kids the knowledge. We need to teach the kids the methodology, the critical thinking process through which they are trained to transform this information into a beneficial knowledge. And I can tell you safely that today, my last statement is the goal for the parents. How can we generate and train kids that are critical thinkers and not just the followers? Because you see, right now, the challenge is that this influx distracts you from thinking and giving a second thought. Can just imagine, you have your information highway, and then you are given an information, and in no time, there's no time to think and just see that information, you get another burst of information coming in. But you know, people like us who have been trained on critical thinking, it's not a problem for us. We take 50,000 information and, you know, take it out. Oh yes, this is this, and then we take it. These are four which are beneficial, and then we use it to our benefit. And that's where the blessing of internet is. Let's be very fair, because just like any other thing, there are pros and cons. But what happens to the children and the youngsters? They are not given a second to give a second thought. And that's where the problem comes in. So our kids are now becoming followers, being influenced. You would see that, you know, there are great people on YouTube and on social media that are flagged as, he's a big influencer. And out of 50 million people following them, you can get about couple of hundred influencers. So you see, that's the challenge. And the problem of kids getting off track is this. The moment they stop critical thinking, they will take everything and anything and they would fall. Just because their friends are doing, just because, this guy has about 50,000 of following. Okay, no, this has about 150,000 following. So let's do that. The challenge today is to stop our kids being influenced. That's the challenge. Okay, I can tell you one thing that, what I do, my discussions and my work, I make a transcript of the same. So if somebody would like to go and revisit all what I've said, I'll give you my email address. You can request it and I'll send it a PDF. Okay. Now, so are we clear on what's the challenge? Okay. Information age, freedom. Okay. So now we know what is the challenge. Now I would discuss why it is a challenge. A couple of things I've already discussed. I'll just briefly do a small addition to those. The second deceit of this age, freedom, is that freedom is impliedly taken as absolute freedom. You see, we are a free country. We are a free people. This is a free land. You're supposed to do whatever you want. That's a big deceit. Why? I'll give you my arguments, because you see, I'm not going to say anything, everything, and tell you to accept it just because I'm saying no. I'll give you a verifiable intellectual argument. You can test it yourself. Now, if I say, I'm free to do whatever I want, so I can tell you that freedom is never absolute. Freedom is always relative. Because if you have an absolute freedom, that's going to result in anarchy, in chaos. I'll give you an example. We are all free to do whatever we want. Like in Quran, Allah says, when you go in Jannah, you will have this state. وَلَكُمْ فِيهَا مَا تَشْتَهِي أَنفُسُكُمْ وَلَكُمْ فِيهَا مَا تَدَّعُونَ. You will do whatever you want, wherever you want, and you can get whatever you want at the time you want. But unfortunately, this trial of life, that is the reason Allah has deprived this from happening. But the problem is that, we are still in that daydreaming mode, trying to get all that we want. And that's where the entire depression, tension, stress starts in a human being. And sometimes I counsel people on stress control. I says, if you understand one thing, that in this world, not all of your desires are going to happen, you will reduce your 50% of the stress. And believe me, I have did this for the last so many years. My life is stress-free. Because see, when something doesn't happen, I get agitated. I used to get agitated. But then when it happens, I tell them, do you remember why you're here? Remember? And the tension goes. So once you train yourself like this, 50% of your stress is going to go away. The rest 50% is worth solving. This 50% is wasting your time. Okay, coming back to that, why is it a challenge? You see, freedom is not absolute, I told you. Freedom is relative. But today, generally, the freedom is being professed as if it is absolute. Because if it's an absolute freedom, I like my teacher's Mercedes. And then I say, why would he have it? I should have it. So I'm going to take it away by force because I'm strong. So can you imagine if there is an absolute freedom? What would happen? So this is a big deceit. Okay, now what is this freedom doing? Or what has it done to us? Because we are all Muslims. So I am going to encompass this in the outline of being a Muslim believer. See, the first thing, and please, I want you to please see and examine my argument and come back if you feel have, Khalisa, please, especially you. See, freedom, what is being taught today, the first thing it does is it takes away what is known as shame in a person. हया जिसको हम कहते हैं, आप गौर कीजिएगा इसके ऊपर, आज रात कल गौर कीजिएगा. जब आप कहते हैं ना कि you are free to do whatever you want in this country, तो सबसे पहले ये होता है कि हया जो है ना, shame जिसको हम कहते हैं, वो फौरन खत्म हो जाती है. उसको खत्म करने का सारे मौके दे दिए जाते हैं. अच्छा, अब देखिए हया क्या चीज है. Sorry, I'm going to continue in English. What is shame or haya, as we call? You see, it has two segments. One segment of haya or shame is that there is an inhibition in you or in me of speaking something or acting upon something, either privately or publicly. And because it's an academic discussion, I would be very direct, because to give the example, that there are people who would not like to speak some words, something in front of their elders. What is this? This is haya. Because they feel that, their respect is not something that they should be exposed to this type of speech by him. So shame is this inhibition. We all know that, I had friends who used to smoke, but when the professor used to come or father used to come, they would just immediately, put off the cigarette and they said, what is this? This is haya. It's inhibition to do something in front of somebody or privately. Privately, if somebody takes off his clothes, we would never see our body. This is our, natural instinct. We would only see our body without clothes if it is necessary for some reason. This is haya. And the second segment of haya is, if the haya is present, that's the remorse of, violating haya. If somebody does something which is beyond haya, which is violation of haya, and if haya is still in him, he will get a remorse. So now, the first thing this freedom does is he provides all the environment, content, speech, verbiage, actions to follow that, slowly kills that portion of haya. You see, in Quran, Allah said that, when Adam and Hawa alayhi salatu salam, when they were exposed to their private part, what did they do? They started covering their private parts. What was this? This is haya. They were embedded with an inhibition to expose their private parts in public. So this is haya. Now what happens? See, I like to quote a reference from the riwayat, from hadith of Sahih Bukhari. It's hadith number 3483, and the greatest Sahih. Huzur Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has said, the meaning of this is, if you feel no shame, إِذَا لَمْ يَسْتَحِي فَافْعَلْ مَا شِئْتَ. Do whatever you want then. So the first casualty of this freedom is haya. Okay, now what happens? I'll explain very explicitly so my youngsters, my young parents, they understand. I am encouraged to talk something that I would not talk in public. Example, there are people in Pakistan, in my society where I've been brought up, they are gay, and we know them. We know them. But they would never tell us, even us as friends. We can just see their lifestyle. Let alone they coming on, on a platform or in a public and telling everybody. Now, what has happened today is that this haya, when it is being suffocated, then the person comes out, has no problem speaking or acting on something that he would not have done if haya was there. And not only that, he then preaches and professes it. And the last degree of this is he celebrates it. We have to understand this freedom has taken us to such an extent. Well, you may disagree with me, but I've given you the verifiable, objective, intellectual arguments. You can test it, because that's my conclusion. You can have your own conclusions. But the reality is this. Today, a boy or a girl comes in that I am gay. Okay, fine, you're gay. No, you have to accept it. Okay, we accept it. We have no problems with them, because they are human beings and they have some of their own ideology or way of conducting their life, which is fine. As Muslims, we don't have a problem. But now he tells us, I celebrate it. Okay, not a problem. You celebrate? No, sir, you got to celebrate with me. Now that's a problem for me. I can't do that. Why? Because haya is still alive in me. Well, I'm not going to be responsible for his acts. And I would quote an ayah of Quran, which makes you very, tension-free. It's the ayah number 105 of Surah Al-Mawrid. And you may not have heard this ayah very many times from the ulamas, except for people like, Khalid Saab or other people in the gathering. Masjid you may not find, but listen to this ayah. Why I am not concerned with him? For this reason. Allah says, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu taqullaha, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu kunu anfusakum, alaykum anfusakum. Thank you. Ya ayyuhallazina amanu alaykum anfusakum la yadhurrukum man dhalla idha ihtadaytum ila Allahi marji'ukum jami'an fayunabbi'ukum bima kuntum ta'malun. Oh, you believers, mind your own self, audit your own self, be responsible for your own acts. The acts of the people who are perverse are not going to affect you or make you look bad or be bad just because they are doing it, if you are on the right path. And at the end of the day, Allah is going to gather everybody and will let everybody know what they were doing. So if the guy is celebrating, I have no problem till then. But when he says, I want you to celebrate with me. Now, what has happened? Now it is in my control, because I am in my control. And I willfully start celebrating that thing. Then I am doing treason against my own conviction, because my conviction is that I am a Muslim, and to my way of life, this is not right. So there comes the accountability. It was in my hands, in my control, and I didn't, just because to please this guy. No, that's the limit. Now what is happening is the freedom is giving this situation. Okay, why it is a challenge. So are we clear why this is a challenge? Because we understand what it is and why it is, then obviously the strategy is going to be very, very properly designed. Okay. The core challenge: to make our kids critical thinkers, not followers. Now, what approach? We have a lot of things going on because of in the name of freedom. And what I have seen, and I'm talking about my own personal observation, that I have seen a lot of agitation among Muslims here in the mosque, and they would do passionate, verbal sermons condemning the acts and, talking about it in the most zealous manner. That's it. I have spent about a couple of weeks here listening to the khutbahs in the mosque on this topic of, say, for example, LGBT, because right now it's one of the main issues. But I have yet to come across a solution or a strategy for Muslims to be taken to by any of the speaker. You see, mere condemnation, what we call bickering, wailing, is not going to be sufficient. Believe me, it's not going to be sufficient. We have to understand the problem, come up with our strategy. Now, the strategy is very, very, very easy. It's easy, but it requires patience and perseverance. You see, there comes the human nature. Human nature wants everything to be done by a switch, and it happens. It's not going to happen. So please understand that if we are trying to raise kids who are pious, it's a long journey. It would need patience, perseverance. Okay? So now, the approach is only one. Dialogue with the kids, making them critical thinkers, and telling them everything with a critically processed reason. Like, for example, it's not going to be sufficient for us to tell our kids, okay, this is haram, you can't have this burger. No. It was sufficient 30 years ago. When we came 30 years ago with our family, somebody told us, don't go to McDonald's because, it says halal, and that was fine. Finish. We never took halal. But today, no. They would say why. So there are scholars, there are good Islamic thinkers, they have devised every answer. So as parents, you have to get in touch with them. First of all, best thing is you educate yourself, like I did. I'm not one of those people that would, divert my kids to other people. So I spent years in learning the religion myself, not to tell everybody. No. My job, my project was to raise my 4 kids based on the tenets of my religion. And alhamdulillah, I'm done. And this is what I'm telling is a bonus. So please, if you want to be a good parents and your kids, my first request is, if you have an academic flair, if you have an academic inclination, please go to the scholars. And we have scholars like Khalid Zahir Saab, Ghamidi Saab, a lot of people. It's here in this category, we have 2. In other categories, we have 50, hundreds. I would tell you to go wherever you feel comfortable, but please, either you learn the religion properly in an academic way yourself, or if you don't have a time, then you introduce your kids from the very childhood to some scholars that you take guidance from. Okay? Your parents should know that, my father, when he had a question in Islam, he would go to Mr. X. So, in addition to that, I have introduced 4 or 5 scholars. And I encourage them to listen to all people on the same topic. You know why? Because in my academic life, I used to study one subject from 6 books, the same topic. And after that, I would find that, this book's author's way of telling me is very logical, and I would take that way. So it's the same process. The wheel has been invented. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. So please, as parents, your first responsibility, my first responsibility, is to know that thing that we want to pass on. The problem is that, we want to pass on everything, but we don't want to know that thing. We don't want to just give time to that thing. So please understand, dreaming is not going to take us anywhere. Dreaming is going to just, if benefit something, is going to make a goal or a vision, which is fine. Because dreaming in itself is not bad. You dream, you think, you ponder an idea, that's dreaming, you come up with an idea, beautiful. But now you say, this is my idea and my kids would become this. No way. Yes, that's a fallacy. Please get out of it. Now, we should dialogue. We should critical be on things ourselves so that they know, because they absorb everything that we do. Okay, if they come and tell you, Dad, I want to do something, you ask them, okay, son, I'm going to do it, but I need to get conviction. Convince me. So that is going to generate in them that, my father is not accepting unless I give reason. So that's going to train them to come up with their own quest or request with reason. And similarly, when you tell them to do anything based on your religion, rituals, or whatever, you give them the reason. You see what happens? I come across with a lot of youngsters in my work. And a lot of time they say, see, we don't understand, why do we pray 5 times a day? And they have a right to ask. Because you see, God is not visible. So after listening to all my teachers and, I got an idea, and I just tell them that, okay, you have a problem in 5-time prayers? Say, yes, we pray, but we don't understand why, 5 times you go. I said, okay, you tell me, if your mother tells you that I want you to be with me in the evening and have a cup of tea with me, and we can, talk and we can discuss things, and she wants it to be done every day. And now I'm talking to about 16, 17 years old guys, like who are independent personalities, not those 7, 8 years kids. So I asked them, what would you do? Because you are in a job, the job is new. So most of the times they say, no, we'll take out some time to come and, sit with our mother. I said, why? You see, she's my mother. So I tell them, yes. Why? Because you have recognized the relationship of this woman to you. And this conviction in your mind of this relationship is making you express that. And that is motivating you to sacrifice your time that you could have given to other things for this woman. So I tell them, you need to first understand what relationship Allah has with us. Once you understand this relationship, because you see, people say that, we love this person and they don't know them. There is no relationship. I say, you can't do this. Love cannot be there unless there is a relationship. A lot of people come and say, we had love in first sight. I said, no, that's something else. I don't know what it is. You find it can't be love, because love is with somebody whom you already have a relationship. Relationship, gives birth to love, not the other way around. In the real relationship. And what is the test? Okay, now they come and because I have to prove, I have to be critical, logical. I said, the test is very simple. If you love somebody, you are ready to sacrifice for him or her. Test yourself. If somebody is ready to sacrifice for you, he is in love with you. If my mother tells me, I tell my mother, I love you. Say, okay, beta, today don't go for your gym. Take me to some place and I do my shopping. And I said, okay, mom, okay, my gym is, I love her. Because I'm ready to sacrifice what I love. I love my gym. But when it comes to my mother, that's the real test. So I tell my youngsters, anytime you feel that you love somebody or he loves or she loves you, try and put a test. There was a gentleman, he said that I love this woman. I said, okay, how much do you know him? 2-3 months we have been, okay. Menica, look, if this woman comes and tells you that, my father is in the hospital and there's no one to stay with him for the next 15 days, he's critical. Are you ready to take his care, leave your job, come for 15 days and stay with him in the hospital? And he goes, Mom. I said, your reply within that, yes, I'm ready, that's going to prove that you love that person. And if you feel an inhibition, oh, who's going to do that, man? That's a big deal. That can be something else, it's not love. Because the relationship and love comes first and then the obedience. So I tell those youngsters that once you understand the relationship of a creator, your mother gave you the birth and she takes care of it. It's right in front of you for the last 17, 18 years. Your mind is intellectually convinced that she is my beloved. Similarly, we have to inculcate in ourselves as in our kids' mind, what is the relationship of Allah? And once that relationship is established and understood intellectually, believe me, they will get up from their bed and pray Fajr. Because you see, it's human nature. If I am convinced intellectually that something is important to me, I don't need any motivation. And I'll give you an example. Everything that I give, I'll give an argument and example to test. See, there is a 18 years old boy or a girl, got a first job. She gets up at 5 o'clock to report at 7 o'clock, drive about 45 minutes. Every day is 5 days a week. What is that motivation that kicks her up or him up from the bed at 5 o'clock? The conviction that this job is very important for me. I can't miss it. So once a relationship with God is established in that manner, where you have priority for him to be happy and priority for him not to be unhappy. Okay, and here I would explain something more clearly, because a lot of time we hear the word taqwa. Wait, whosoever will have taqwa, he will get up with the prayers as soon as the muezzin calls. Now, what is this taqwa? In my 40 years of knowing religion and getting educated from all these teachers of mine, I think that taqwa has been translated slightly in a manner which needs to be a little bit explained. You see, taqwa is fear of Allah. When I talk to youngsters, they always come and say, this is fear of Allah, fear of... I said, see, there is one thing, fear. It has many shades. You have to understand what is this taqwa fear. You see, if I go outside and there is a lion, there is a fear in me, right? And what is that fear? That he's going to kill me, he's going to harm me to an extent that, I'm going to be devastated. Is that correct? But I have a fear that my mother is going to be unhappy. That's also a fear. What is that? Now, when it comes to relationship and fearing those relationships, that nuance of fear is actually meant. And I'll give you an example. You see, I'm going out of the house and my wife says that, you have to be at 10 back. So constantly, whatever I'm doing, I'm scheduling my, I got off at about 6 p.m. and I have to return because she said, please come. Okay. Is there a relationship? Yes. She's my wife. Do I love her? Yes. I care for her. Okay. So now what would dictate me? The entire thing that I'm doing or planning for my 4 hours, I would keep one thing in mind. Okay, should not be late than 10. Make sure that you're back by 10. This is also a fear, isn't it? Tell me. This is a fear. And this fear is not making her unhappy. See, this is the fear that we need to be inculcated. And that will be only possible if you know the relationship of the person. You see, if my mother is going to be unhappy, why does it matter to me? Yes, because I know the relationship. I know that, I don't want to make her unhappy. I'm convinced on this. So see, I tell them that if you know your God, if you know who's created you, and if you know that whatever this lady whom you call mother has done for you, this entity has done maybe 70 or maybe 70,000 times more. So once they get convinced, then nobody needs them to take to the mosque. They go, they pray, because it's a mental, nature that I need to get convinced. This is my job. I cannot leave it. That's the motivation. So now we have to inculcate in our kids the relationship of God and what that relationship wants. Because see, I tell them I love my mother and I never meet her. I never greet her. She's my mother, I love her. And I trumpet. Oh, I love my mother. But what is the test? The test would be, is my professed love expressed in certain manner in my actions? If not, then the love is useless. See, we love the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. A lot of people say, they celebrate with the Sira conference and everything. But love is nothing except following, doing what. You see, if I love my mother, or if I love my wife, I would follow what she says. That's the test of love. So we have to teach our kids this love, the real nature, and the acid test. So they can test themselves as well as somebody else professing them love. So till here, are we clear, or is there any question? Yes.
Everyone who follows his life needs his love.
Now this is a witty question, and the answer to this question needs a separate ambience and the mood and the environment. I can based on this ambience, I would just want to reply this.
But you've already answered it. It's fear.
Yeah, it's fear.
Of not making her unhappy.
No, मैं इसको किसी और तरह एक्सप्लेन करता हूँ
जी
कि मुझे अपनी वाइफ से उसका मैं बहुत केयर करता हूँ और मैं 10 बजे वापस जाना भी चाहता हूँ, लेकिन अगर मैं किसी ऐसी महफिल में बैठा हूँ जहाँ मैं बहुत इंजॉय कर रहा हूँ, तो मैं आधा घंटा 1 घंटा बर्दाश्त करूँगा, कोई बात नहीं, उसकी थोड़ी सी नाराजगी। लेकिन अगर कोई मेरा बॉस मिलेगा कि 10 बजे मेरी जॉब पे आना वरना यू आर फायर, तो मैं अपनी सारी इंजॉयमेंट छोड़ के वहां पे चला जाऊंगा। इसको आप कैसे करेंगे? लव कहाँ पे है?
देखिए मैं आपको एक बात बताऊं। देखिए बात, the thing is that when you,
so it is a fear.
I never said it's not fear. I told you that there's a different nuance that you have to give. I never said that this is not fear. You see, everything is what inhibits you is the fear. Same in haya. What is that inhibition? That's the fear of not doing something or doing something. You see, I'll give you an example. That your wife tells you, but you know that your relationship with her is so casual. And this, everybody knows his own situation. There cannot be a general rule for this. This is a situational, circumstantial decision that has to be made by that person. If there is some thing between you and your wife, I cannot make, or Khalid Saab cannot make a decision, okay, you do. No, you have to decide. So your wife told you that, you come back at 10. So you are careful. You see, with love, you care. You don't care, you don't love. So this is the care that you are granting her, not because, when you will come back to home at about 11 o'clock, she's going to get you with a staff and, start beating. No, sir. This is internal situation. Now, I'll just put apart those two situations. You see, in today's world, you don't have an excuse for both the situations in today's world. You see, if I would get late, and I know, I would pick up a call and I said, Bibi, I'm going to be late. And this has been happening for the last so many weeks. And you see, as long as you show them that you had weight to what she said, believe me, nobody is a pharaoh. You make a person pharaoh just because of your own actions. I can guarantee you, I can go at 2 o'clock in the morning with a deadline of 10 being provided. I give her a call. every hour. And I said, look, I'm here, and I'll be late. Because the other guy knows that, you care and you're taking some time to call. So that situation also, if your boss calls, you have a two fear now. You have a fear of your boss. So obviously, what would you do? You're going to call her. Look, my boss has called, and you know that, this, and only you know how to do it, because your wife is your wife and my wife is my wife. She knows how to handle me and I know how to handle her. So you got to do it yourself. Clear? Okay. Any question till here? Please.
Can we make this from deep inside, sort of regard and respect and responsibility?
You see, when I say you love someone, love ignites care. Care again ignites love, mutual love. Khalid Sahib would tell you better because he's a alim of Quran. قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ فَاتَّبِعُونِي يُحْبِبْكُمُ اللَّهُ. Allah is telling that, if you obey the messenger, Allah is going to love you. Is that right? That's the tarjuma. So we can take home something from this ayah, that if you want somebody to love you, start obeying him or her. I can guarantee you, I have done myself. People who you want that they should love you, just do what they are saying, only in the realm of right things. Because you see, once you do it, they would feel that, the guy is doing whatever I want. And that would generate love. This is what this ayah is actually telling you. But if he tells you to do something, and that's correct in all realms, but it's my problem now. I'm saying, why is he dictating me? See, that most of the time it's your inner self that's the problem. And majority of the time, the problem which is within us, we make it look like it's a problem of others. So you obey that person. And if you obey and try to be very gentle, I'm not saying that love will happen. Quran is saying, ask the scholar. idfa billati hiya ahsan fa idha alladhi baynaka wa baynahu adawatan ka'annahu waliyyun hamim. You see, Allah is giving a very good counsel. It says that right things and wrong things cannot be equal. And if you have somebody very tough, you return bad things with good things. Idfa billati hiya ahsan. So what you are getting from him, return with the best. And Allah is giving a guarantee. فَإِذَا الَّذِي بَيْنَكَ وَبَيْنَهُ عَدَاوَةٌ. And if that person and you had a big enmity, animosity, كَأَنَّهُ وَلِيُّ الْحَمِيدِ. If you do this and continue to do this, it's going to make him your best friend. But there is a price, and a very heavy price to pay. And Allah is telling you that price. وَمَا يُلَقَّاهَا إِلَّا الَّذِينَ صَبَرُوا. This is not going to happen to anyone except those who are embedded and drowned in patience. وَمَا يُلَقَّاهَا إِلَّا ذُو حَظٍّ عَظِيمٍ. And it is going to happen to none except who are the most luckiest. I'm giving you today this. I've taken this in my life, and I have seen people, alhamdulillah, getting this, my friends. But then, you see, you will have to reform yourself. Every time when somebody tells you to do something, this ego is going to come. Because please go and check. The entire problems and disagreements and, all disputes in families, in individuals, in countries are based on one thing. He did not listen to what I said. Once you start training yourself that you are not going to be getting all that you want, this is a training. And this is what is known as tazkiyah. Tazkiyah is what? It's not purify others. No. It is purifying and working, doing a jihad with yourself. But unfortunately, we don't even talk about it now. But one of the functions of Huzur Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam that has been narrated in Quran is tazkiyah. Yuzakkihim. What is this tazkiyah? See, tazkiyah is the basis of all the good character that you can have. You see, we have seen Huzur Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam going to that lady, as narrated, whatever, that she didn't throw the garbage in his way for a few days, and she went and said, why? He went to her and said, why, what's wrong? That's idfa billati hiya ahsan. And then you read this and see what happens. How much do you have time?
There is one question, if you read it.
I can't see any reading here. If you believe me, the entire religion is based upon your own audit. If you leave this, you're out. I think before talking about love in terms of falling in love, infatuation perhaps is not comparable to loving your mom or even Allah. When teenagers feel attraction towards someone they know they are not in love. Our generation fell in love much faster than generation did. Okay? I think what parents struggle with more is the feeling before love. Even identifying when you are infatuated with someone, I don't know if I make sense, but wanted to add this to ask your opinion on what I have said. Well, your text is not very eloquent in what you are exactly trying to emphasize, but the last is, I think what parents struggle with more is the feeling before love, even identifying when you are infatuated with someone I don't know. Okay. You see, probably she is saying that, the comparison that I gave with the love of a mother or love of someone, that our, kids, when they get on puberty and start liking opposite genders, probably that's the question. You see, probably this questioner is talking about parents taking that liking of the youngsters and having a problem with that. You see, that's a separate segment. The segment is separate in the reason that opposite gender attracting each other after puberty and having an inclination to get together, that's a natural process. And if we as intellectual humans, let alone parents, we don't understand and realize and be cognizant of the natural process that Allah has programmed, then obviously we are going to do injustice. And that's what I think this questioner is talking about. As parents, when this happens with our kids, we have to understand what is the reality. The reality is, and she probably wants me to make it clear, what is this happening? Just as I explain what is the happening when a mother and a child love is happening, or with the love with God is happening. You see, this liking, I would not call it love. When youngsters meet and they like opposite genders, this liking is actually an attraction, a desire to know someone and desire to be in the company of someone. Now, this cannot be love, because you see, the test of love here is probably going to be failed. But if it is not love, is it all fake? No, this is a very, very important practical phenomenon. And since I have not come to that point, my talk is going to come on this when I take the age group of 16 and above. So I'll just explain summarily that, this aspect, there is a lesson for the parents how to tackle this situation. Because you see, that's a fact. It's a divine programming. You cannot deny it. But how would you handle it? Then once we come on this section next week, I will elaborate it when I would take from 16 to onwards. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I think I've answered the question for now. Okay, now I'll wrap up today's, how many minutes do we have?
We have around 5 minutes.
Okay, for the questions?
Yeah.
Together, and then half an hour a question, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we will have Dr. Khalid.
Yes, yes. Okay, now, what as parents we would do? Encourage questions, be prepared to listen to questions. The 50 years ago phenomena that, hey, why do you ask me this? You can't ask this. No, sir, finish. Train yourself as parents to be good listeners. Listen, don't get impatient. And listen and just keep quiet. Let them speak, okay? If you don't let them speak, what would happen? I'll tell you. They would speak anyways. It would not be you with somebody else. So please. Now, this is very important. You see, my talk is in 2 segments. This is a general discussion. And then I have taken my discourse with age. This is the age group, like 0 to 4. What is the tendency of the kid here? What are the do's, demonstrate, request, and require by the parents? And how would you benchmark the progress? So maybe in the next lesson, we would take. Today, we'll discuss this on a macro level, and on micro basis, we'll cover those, okay? Now, generally, we have to be now prepared to discuss those issues that 30 years ago, 50 years ago, parents would not discuss. Now, this is very important. I want you to be very, very vigilant on this. Because you see, today, because of the information and whatever we discussed, issues like drugs, sexual conduct, sexual activity, pornography, and any other thing that we as Muslims take exception to. And I am telling you, not by reading some books. Alhamdulillah, I have done this for the last 30 years with my own kids. As soon as my kid went to class 6th or 7th, we would discuss on dinner table, on going to the gym, going to the, and I would start like this. Do you know that, when I was at 7, guys would come with some photographs where people were naked. Yeah, was this so? Yeah. So what did you do? Well, do you know that, our shame and our religion is something that we should not show our body parts, let alone being naked. Well, if Dad, why? So was this? Yeah. And then, a lot of kids would come and say, after the break, we are going to go back to the canteen, at the back of the canteen, and we'll smoke. So I would be the person who would be introducing these things to him. So this may seem very trivial to you or people listening, but this is my tested. I've tested in my own lab. My own lab are my 4 kids, alhamdulillah. So what happens is that, this kid, before that thing knocks at his door, he knows that, my dad's told me something about it. So 2 things will happen. He will get a flag raised that I was told. It is very, 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 natural. You see, I'm going to say Ajax. And I'm going to somebody who lives at Ajax. And I said, okay, what's happening with Ajax, that highway? No. There's a construction going on there at this area. You please, do this. Or I take to the Google and so where would I be better off? Going just without any guidance, or going with a guidance and then getting that bump? And, I know it's a bump. It doesn't matter. This is, please don't underestimate what I'm saying. Then I talk to the parents who have been doing this, and they are successful. Because you see, when something knocks, the flag, it's the same thing. My dad told me, my mom told me, okay. I seen a woman who said that when her boy went to high school, she told her everything in a very veiled manner, what happens in a pornographic access. And she told him that, you know, as soon as you get this, when you're working on a computer, the first thing you say is, Astaghfirullah, and close it. And then you immediately tell me. And, you know, she had been discussing with this when he was like 7th, 6th grade, whatever. So then she narrated an incident where actually this happened to the kid. And the kid did the same thing. As soon as this pornographic material, you know, in terms of a link, or, you know, they make a link that makes you click it. So he clicked and he saw all this. He said, Astaghfirullah, and closed his laptop and even immediately went to mom. Mom, you told me this, you know, this is happening. So she said, yes, no problem. Because you see, if you've seen this, not a problem. Allah is very forgiving. We'll say tawbah and we'll close it and we'll wipe it off. Now you tell me, this is one scenario. As another scenario where you don't talk. You don't know what he's doing. Don't ask, don't tell. I don't want anybody to be an Einstein to understand what I'm saying. You can judge yourself. This strategy is all that we do in our daily lives. Whenever we do something, whenever we go, we make sure that we know the best information about its pros and cons or whatever. Now, when it comes to giving to our kids, we say, no, don't talk about it. That's lethal. That's lethal based on the challenge today. Okay? Now, last, which is important. There are two types of kids. Two categories. One who are very anxious, very curious, asking question every time. I have categorized it in two categories based on simplicity. And there are kids which would never ask questions. They are more ponderers, you know, thinkers. And we don't know they are thinking good or bad. I don't know, but this is a category of kids that I have come across. Now, the biggest challenge is to make those kids curious. So you have to observe your kids, that if your kids are not very, expressing themselves, asking, curiosity, curious they are, mind you, both the categories, but the expression of curiosity is very implicit in one category and the other one is very explicit. So if you have this category of a kid, there is another challenge, that you have to prick him to be curious. Don't let him absorb things. Because you see, curiosity is the mother of knowledge and knowledge is the mother of conviction. So if you don't have conviction on something, you will never act upon it. That's important. So please make sure that you identify your kids. And there should be a constant monitoring of what they are doing. Monitoring means vigilance. You manage an office. You do your work in your office, but you are actually virtually looking after everybody. That's what we need. Last thing, the tool, the main foundation where our strategy is going to be successful. وَمَا يُلَقَّاهَا إِلَّا الَّذِينَ صَبَرُوا. It will not happen to anyone except those who have strong pillar of patience. You have to be patient. No agitation, no force. And when I come to the macro segment, I'll give you an age-related behavior pattern. But there should be no force, no agitation. And I can tell you, write down in your diaries, whatever you tell them, 99% of the times they will go against it. So please tell yourself, don't get agitated. Don't get excited. Focus on your work and let Allah do his own work. And this is what the Sunnah of Allah. He wants you to do your work, homework perfectly, then don't get disturbed. Then you have to, if you do this, you may get good kids. If you do this, you may not get good kids. Nuh alayhi salam was the main man to be given example. He did everything. Kid didn't work. So at the end of the day, don't think that it is only you and your strategy and everything. No. Everything should be placed where it belongs to. So you place your efforts. Yes, they are necessary. They are preliminary. They are preconditioned. There's a precondition for them to be in place. Then Allah's attention will come, and as is sunnah, and then you make dua. So please, patience, patience, patience. These 20 years, if you have small kids, 20, 22 years, all you are going to be tested with is your patience. If you lose patience, then things can get turned the other side. And I will discuss next week, inshallah. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين. If there are any questions, please come up. We have 10, 15 minutes, whatever.
Yeah, we can have 2 more questions for you.
Okay, please.
And then we will continue.
Yeah. Okay, there's another question. I agree 100% with talking to you kids. Keeping conversation open, keep dialogue, etc. But this is also a reason why sex education at school is important. They actually deviate you from pornography, etc. You know what I mean. Absolutely, like you and you said, it's lethal not to talk to our kids. The questioner has asked this question. I am in 100% agreement with this questioner, because that is what I said. If you don't face the reality, then reality is going to manifest. Rest assured. Now, this questioner is saying that, I saw the reality. We are on the same page with the questioner, right? Yes, we need to talk. We need to educate them. But for this purpose, there can be different methodologies. So one of the methodologies that this learned questioner has come up with is that, that in school, they teach about sex education, okay? And then they educate them to an extent that they can be away from these type of pornographic and, all exploitation, everything. Well, personally, this is a methodology that has been invented and implemented in the West. But having lived in the West and studying the Western culture for the last 30 years, I've lived here, and the entire society that I've worked with professionally, that was my lab. I feel that this methodology has done more harm than the good. But it's not a time to explain this. We can have a whole session on this. Because you see, it's very easy. We judge by results. It's very easy. You don't have to be an Einstein. This methodology of sex education was, when we were young, it was introduced in the West. And, we will educate, people about sex and everything. And at that time, if I remember, 30 years ago, there was a problem of teen pregnancies. That was a big problem. And then they said, why don't we, educate the kids about these reproductive systems and, But when I see the results, and where does the result manifest? The result manifests in the social system, the family system. And this is my opinion. People can have a disagreement. I see that it has not done the cost and benefit ratio, in my opinion, is not what was supposed to be gained by this. So I may differ with the questioner in terms of the efficacy of this methodology of teaching generally to all, everything. And there's a difference. You see, when you teach general knowledge about some subject to everyone across the board, that's fine. But the problem with the sex education, puberty, and related sexual activity matters is actually a subjective matter. People who are active at the early stages and people who are not active at the early stages, when you keep all these two categories similar and give them this education, what you are doing is that, you are giving information to some people that they don't need now. You are unnecessarily distracting them. And I don't, because you see, I'm the advocate of speaking up. I'm not the advocate of keeping mum. I'm not saying that, you don't give any education. That's why I'm telling you that, the first place of education, that is your home. You should start talking about your kids at the age of 7, 8. So I hope this I have answered the question which the questioner has asked. The summary is that I agree in principle. I have difference of opinion in terms of its methodology. I prefer the methodology of passing this from the parents to the kids, discussion, open dialogue. And then when they grow up after 2-3 years, yes, you can have, that's the consensus of the society. But giving them across the board education and no communication on that subject with the parents and the kids, I think that's not going to be beneficial. But that's my opinion.
Right.
Sir, thank you.